The rocky shoreline of Rhode Island. There is danger here. Danger that can strike suddenly and without warning. Each year, thousands of unsuspecting Americans will fall victim to this threat. Basic precautions could prevent this senseless waste of human life, because the danger is death by drowning. In the same period of time, encounters between people and sharks around the world will result in an average of 6 fatalities. Sharks, however, will not fare so well. Millions are killed annually, intentionally or unintentionally. A growing concern for scientists and those dedicated to preserving our natural environment. Today, professors, researchers, and alumni from the University of Rhode Island are at the forefront of an international effort to learn more about these magnificent creatures. Employing sophisticated technology, they are advancing our knowledge of an animal that has too often been portrayed as a symbol of fear and an agent of evil.
What's the matter with the lookout? See that menacing fin? Shark. Of all sea terrors, the shark is the meanest, the most crafty, merciful. He must be taught a lesson, that shark, a lesson that will last him the rest of his life. The only thing you're good for is shark skin and glue, and the China boy may make himself some shark fin soup.
We're still obscuring the characteristics of sharks in our popular literature and videos and things like that. I suppose there's a certain amount of innate fear associated with humans and sharks.
George Burgess is a marine biologist who has studied sharks and related species for decades. An internationally recognized expert, governments and media outlets worldwide regularly seek his expertise. Burgess is also the curator of the International Shark Attack File at the Florida Museum of Natural History.
It's a compendium of investigations of shark attacks worldwide, in which we look at shark attacks both from the perspective of the human and the human's activities and the sharks.
Aware of the public's well-documented fear of sharks, Burgess gently reminds us that from a scientific perspective, it is humans who are intruding into this animal's natural territory.
And of course, when we enter the sea, we're entering a domain that's not ours. We're not very good swimmers. In fact, we're awful. We can't even breathe underwater. So when we enter the sea, we're at a very distinct disadvantage compared to the animals that live there. Part of it is the old kid thing that there's a monster under my bed at night, because we can't see what's under us and they can see us.
Years of studying sharks has led Burgess to the same conclusion reached by a majority of other scientists. Despite their fearsome reputation, sharks are increasingly vulnerable to the pressures being applied on their populations by mankind.
Each year, sharks kill about 6 people per year worldwide. That's the average over the last decade. 6 people per year worldwide. Meanwhile, every year, humans are killing more than 100 million sharks and rays. So it's pretty clear who's the predator and who's the prey in this relationship. And the real story then is not shark bites man, it's man bites shark.
Often, sharks are not the desired commercial target. But for the shark, the results are the same. Overfishing at a rate that could threaten their existence.
The overfishing is largely occurring as these animals are being caught as bycatch in fisheries. By-caught fish are those that are not the focus of the fishery, but still are caught and usually die.
A more insidious practice is also cause for concern. Harvesting shark fins, considered by some a delicacy with magical properties.
Shark fins get the fishermen $20 to $25 a pound right off the boat. So any fish that is caught, intentional or unintentional, is going to get its fins taken off because of the high value.
Efforts to ban the practice of finning are complicated by the traditional importance placed on shark fin soup in many Asian cultures.
Getting folks out of that sort of tradition is a little more difficult than just saying, stop it. And so we need to try to make those changes from inside. It can't be me as a Westerner going over and say you shouldn't do this.
In fact, a dramatic campaign to stop finning, featuring Asian athletes and celebrities, is already underway.
What if you could see how shark fin soup is made? If you could see how each year up to 70 million sharks are killed to end up in soup, could you still eat it?
The message is powerful, but how effective it will be in ending the practice of finning remains to be seen. The long history of treating sharks as a nuisance, or worse, has had predictable results.
Sharks around the world are in decline. Off the United States East Coast, for instance, the major sharks that were involved at one time in a directed shark fishery, a fishery aimed at sharks, have declined drastically, and many of them are down to 30% or in some cases 10% of their original populations. And so fishery management measures are in effect in the United States to reduce that catch so that we can try to bring these guys back.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is the federal agency responsible for the stewardship of the nation's living marine resources and their habitat.
In the U.S., we have a fisheries management plan for sharks, and it's a pretty effective plan that went into effect in the early 1990s. And at this point, we have 21 prohibited shark species, which means they're illegal to possess. And some of them may be some that we're concerned about because of fishing, but also if they're look-alike sharks. I think most people know when they see a shark, they don't realize how many different species or different kinds of sharks there are. So some of those are in that category because they're look-alike, or we just don't know a lot of the biological information about them.
The Cooperative Shark Tagging Program is a collaborative effort between recreational anglers, the commercial fishing industry, and NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service.
We actually sample the sharks all up and down the coast. So we'll start in Florida and come as far north as Delaware or further north if the fish are still available. And on those research surveys, we can bring some sharks in and do some biological sampling, and also we tag and release quite a few of them.
Tags containing data, such as the date, location, size, and sex of a shark, are implanted near the dorsal fin. When a previously tagged shark is recaught, the information is shared with scientists.
The tagging program involves recreational, commercial fishermen, biologists, so that has been fostering this relationship over the years. It's been in effect for 50-plus years, so we get information on a migration, on age and growth. We can see how much they grew from the time it was tagged to the time it was recaptured. Longevity information. The longest fish in our program was tagged and recaptured 28 years later.
Another source of information for NOAA scientists are shark tournaments. In the past, such events had little concern for protecting sharks.
Fishing tournaments back then and people's attitudes toward sharks were different. You know, the only good shark is a dead shark, and the reputation of a shark, it wasn't necessarily, you know, we have to conserve the species.
But a new philosophy is being embraced by many of today's shark tournaments.
It's now one shark per vessel per trip, and there's a minimum size of 54 inches for most species, hammerhead 78 inches.
This enlightened approach represents a step forward for anglers and scientists.
You know, that fosters a relationship for conservation, for research. You know, it's a really positive program.
Understanding how sharks reproduce, age, and grow is also important to NOAA's mission.
The way you tell age of general fish is through the use of a hard part, and in particular in a shark, that hard part is the backbone. So we're able to take a section of backbone, take one vertebral centra, and section it, and they have bands on them much like rings of a tree. So we count these bands and get an approximate age.
Youngsters are not shy about asking marine biologists, where do baby sharks come from? It's a good question, one with vital implications for maintaining a healthy shark population.
Sharks are actually very interesting reproductively. They reproduce much like humans. So they have internal fertilization. That's one of the reasons they don't have that many young, because it's dependent on the size of the mother. They gestate for about 9 to 12 months. Some species like the spiny dogfish actually gestate for 2 years. And they will have, depending on the size of the mother, anywhere from 4 to 15 young, because it takes a lot of energy to produce large, viable young that are ready to take care of themselves.
Sharks that do reach maturity can display phenomenal survival skills.
Well, the mako shark is a high-performance shark. They have all these adaptations, morphologically, physiologically, biochemically. They're they're super predators. They're one of the fastest fish in the ocean.
But the mako is also highly prized by sports fishermen and commands a hefty price at fish markets. Scientists are racing to learn more about this speedy denizen of the deep.
There's not that much known about their population. They want to manage their populations as international fish. They go so far that they go in the waters of all kinds of different countries, out in international waters a lot of times. And so it's really a shark without boundaries, without borders.
Tagging and tracking mako sharks is providing answers to key questions about this animal's behavior.
Most of my work is on tracking, so that we've got some really fine-scale movements, information on where they go, and some of them over 3 years we've been tracking them. If you're interested in ecology, then you see where their populations go, and you can get an idea of who they're interacting with in their ecosystem, the predators, the prey. And then from a management, conservation point of view, it's really hard to manage their populations wisely if you don't know where their population is in the first place. If you know the boundaries of a population, if you know where the males go, you know where the females go, and you know where the young ones are, then you know, one, who's out there catching them, what kind of fisheries they're being taken in, and two, who they belong to, or whose waters they're swimming through.
Sharks play an important role in the ecology of Narragansett Bay and Rhode Island Sound. In a URI laboratory, a stone's throw from the bay, one scientist is conducting cutting-edge research into a fascinating feature of sharks: how they bite.
I am interested in the evolution of feeding mechanisms and swimming mechanisms, and sharks are the most ancestral vertebrate living today with jaws. How did they evolve to protrude away from the cranium in different ways? How did they evolve to suction feed, and how did others evolve to bite feed?
Studying sharks in the laboratory allows scientists to analyze functions that would be difficult to measure in the wild, provided that a suitable subject can be found to contribute the data.
So one of the sort of lab sharks that we work on all the time are the bamboo sharks. It's very similar to the nurse sharks that you might see in your local aquarium. The nurse sharks get much bigger than bamboo sharks. Because we bring them into the lab, the size is limited. The sharks that we work on are about 3 to 5 feet.
Even the diminutive bamboo shark can present certain challenges in the laboratory.
Water always wins.
But they can also reveal a treasure trove of information.
So they're really good at suction feeding. They're also good at crushing. They have teeth that stick up for piercing, that are good for eating things like fish, slippery things like fish. But when they encounter food that's too hard for the teeth to pierce, like say a crab carapace, the crab actually pushes the teeth over, and it forms this molar surface that is really good for cracking crabs. So it's something that has only evolved, as far as we know, in this one group of sharks, and it allows them to pretty much eat whatever's out there. Well, we don't go out into the water with them because since we study feeding, it's a little dangerous to go out and be in the water with them while they're feeding. So we bring them all into the lab. We use a lot of technology. They're small transducers that we can put in various places. We can implant them and then take them out afterwards, and the sharks are fine. And they don't seem to be bothered by it, but these little transducers will measure movement. So one of the types of technology we use is called sonomicrometry. And they're tiny little 1 to 2 millimeter beads that we put in various places that use ultrasound to talk to each other. And because we know the speed of sound in water, we can calculate the distance that these markers are moving. So say if you put one on the upper jaw and the lower jaw, you can tell when the animal's opening and closing its mouth. And this is how we found out that there's different ways that the upper and lower jaws are moving away from the cranium, and also different muscles have evolved to protrude the jaws in these different behaviors. So if we know when the skeletal elements are moving and we know which muscles are activating those movements, and then we can tell which ones were the most ancestral behaviors, which of these behaviors are the more derived behaviors, or the newer behaviors, basically.
Working in the present, shark research like this can help to cast light on the past. Millions of years of evolution contributed to forming the magnificent animals that fascinate us today. The great white shark, a nightmare to some, but the stuff of dreams to others.
When I was dreaming about studying sharks at URI, believe me, the one that we all as young scientists wanted to see and study the most was the great white, just because of its reputation and the sheer size and just the way that animal is portrayed. It draws people to it. And of course, when I went to the state of Massachusetts and started working on sharks, I never anticipated that I would have this opportunity. But we've seen a dramatic change on Cape Cod in the last decade or two. And that's been the increase in the seal population. And with this now giant, robust population, resident population of gray seals we have on Cape Cod, we've seen that species which feeds on seals arrive in relatively larger numbers. And that's been the white shark. So suddenly, the last 5 years, I've been thrown into this unique, remarkable opportunity to study the white shark for the very first time in great detail.
Going backward. It's like being at a stoplight for 2.5 hours and then suddenly have it go green.
Dr. Skomel has worked cooperatively with OSearch, a nonprofit organization that has fostered unprecedented research on great white sharks.
Contender, OSearch. Pick me up, Chris.
Yeah, Doc, we're good. Things have settled down here. We got 2 buoys on about a 13-foot shark, and we're in good shape. We're walking back to the ship right now.
All right, be safe. We're standing by.
OSearch has enabled leading researchers and institutions to generate previously unattainable data on the movement, biology, and health of sharks. Go. Research expeditions are conducted worldwide aboard a mothership that includes a sophisticated marine laboratory.
Ran and got my ultrasound, got everything set up, and
a custom 75,000-pound capacity hydraulic platform can safely lift sharks out of the sea.
Got a bang on the left. We're gonna hit the left.
To the uninitiated, the pulse-pounding action looks like a Western rodeo and an emergency room trauma unit working feverishly on a rolling ocean.
She does not look to be pregnant.
But, in fact, up to 12 studies are conducted by a multidisciplined research team in approximately 15 minutes on a live, mature shark.
Come on. It's been a really cool time to live as a scientist because we've seen dramatic changes in technology that allow us to say what exactly the shark is doing in three-dimensional space between the time we tagged it and the time that tag comes off the shark or we hear from the shark again.
Okay, everybody off the deck.
OSearch employs sophisticated tracking devices and shares its research data, enabling students and the public to learn about shark movements worldwide.
So this is Betsy, and she is our first shark off Cape Cod in 2013 and will be the first shark in our new digital education hub.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go.
There she goes. Good luck, old girl! Good luck. All right.
The scientific process includes gathering data that supports a theory, but also admitting when new information undermines previously held convictions.
The movements of these animals are far more complex and far more dynamic than we ever thought. We like to think in terms of simplifying movements of animals to migratory patterns. In the case of the great white shark, I have not been able to figure out what that pattern is, because every time I think I've got something that might resemble, what I call my snowbird migratory pattern, Cape Cod in the summer, Florida in the winter, back again, I got a shark like Lydia that we tagged that goes out to the central part of the Atlantic Ocean and stays there for all of the winter.
Yeah, Lydia! Yeah, baby, go!
Recent scientific studies point to an increase in the white shark population on the east coast of the United States. Scientists and environmentalists are encouraged by this development. But does it pose a threat to the beach-going public?
I don't think so. When we talk about the probability of attack, even in areas where there's very high densities of white sharks, it's remarkably low. However, I do think that the probability still exists. It's there. And people need to be cognizant of that. They need to use common sense anytime a terrestrial beast like a human goes into the marine environment. Be cognizant of your surroundings, whether it's going to be tides or currents or animals. That's the advice I give to folks when we talk about the occurrence of white sharks in areas of high densities of people.
As our understanding of the true nature of sharks continues to improve, an intriguing possibility is dawning. The possibility of redemption. Not redemption for creatures who have only been victims of their own evolutionary success, but for mankind, once blinded by ignorance and superstition.
The man-eater, the demon fish, the devil fish, this is the way sharks have been characterized. And I think it's tightly linked to our innate fear of animals that can hurt us. And I don't think we're ever going to remove that fear. It's just the way it is. But I'll tell you one thing. We've also seen a changing attitude within the public. More and more research has been done in the last couple of decades that is indicating how important sharks are to the marine ecosystem. That's being shared with the public. We get this awakening that's occurred within the public. I think we've seen a dramatic change in attitudes over the last 50 years from that only good shark is a dead shark to sharks are important.
Hopefully, the importance of sharks will become increasingly clear to future generations. Our challenge is to ensure their opportunity to wonder and to discover all we might learn from the shark.